Maya, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be
Yes,
here.
yes. I know we've tried recording this months ago when I first started the podcast, and due to some issues on my side, had to schedule this re record. But nonetheless, super stoked that you're on the show. So let's find out a little bit how you're enjoying your stay. First question I have for you is, what are some things that you find interesting?
Um, I've been sort of delving into different hobbies. Um, since it's kind of like the beginning of the year, I wanted to sort of start making my own clothing. So I started to learn how to sew, which has been a journey. Um, I'm still creating art. I'm a visual artist, illustrator. So I've been doing more. It's interesting because I've sort of pivoted to tattoo design a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've been experimenting with that. I've always been interested in it. It's just like a completely different art form than what I'm used to. So I'm working on like the design aspect of it right now. And then when I can afford to, I'm hoping to buy my own like tattoo machine and
Oh,
start practicing
nice.
on like fake skin and everything. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited about it.
So what
Um,
got you? Oh, sorry, God.
I was gonna say, what else? I'm super into mystery novels right now, which has been super
Okay.
fun. Yeah,
Nice,
lots of
nice.
hobbies, definitely.
Yeah, definitely doing a lot. Sounds like you're definitely into creating over consuming, right? In most ways. What got you into like the sewing and wanting to make your own clothes?
Um, it's interesting because since I was a teenager, I guess, I've always sort of fluctuated in weight, which is it's not like a drastic thing or anything I'm particularly worried about, but like my fashion has always been about like self-expression. I think it's
Mhm.
sort of like an extension of myself in a way. And I wasn't seeing things that would like fit me in normal like clothing stores or like at the mall. I would always leave kind of like disappointed. So I wanted to sort of replicate, for context, I lived in Japan for like a year and a half, like when I was 18, 19. And there's like a very specific sort of like hyper feminine type of clothing that they wear there. I was like, really wanted to experiment with that once I got to the US. But I just could never find anything that fit me. So I'm hoping this journey sort of like leads me down to like designing like super hyper feminine, like cute clothing that can actually like fit different sizes as opposed to just like a size
One
0 to
size
like
fits
size
all
10.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Instead of these sort of templates or sort of like cookie cutter like articles of clothing that we have to fit into, they're a little bit more custom and tailored to whoever it is that's wearing it, right?
Yeah, I really want to focus on size inclusivity for one, but
Mhm.
also just creativity and like making clothing that feels true to me and what I
Mhm.
want to express. And also it's nice to have different options, instead of just like
Yeah.
what's at the mall or the thrift store or whatever.
The same brands and stores and things like that that are just there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to
I
sort
like
of
that.
branch out from that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Have you, so since starting like this whole sewing adventure, right? Have you created any pieces on your own as of yet?
I'm working on my very first sewing project. So right now I'm trying to learn how to read patterns and stuff, which is
Mhm.
like its own sort of language. And then once I get more established and more confident with like sewing and everything, then I'm gonna try to like make my own patterns and go into like clothing and garment design if I can. Um,
Nice.
right now I think I'm making like this cute like floral blouse. um, yeah, it's been challenging. Sewing is
Yeah.
there's a lot of steps. It requires a lot of like detail oriented mentality, I feel like.
Yeah, just really have to pay attention and focus in. Do you well, actually, let me ask you, besides your time in Japan, right, with all the cultural, like, influence there, do you have any other, like, influences in terms of, like, design and sort of the clothing side of things?
I really love streetwear. Specifically my tastes lean more towards like island fashion and Asian fashion.
Mhm,
Which is why it's so challenging because I think specifically in Asian fashion there's like a lack of diversity and sort of a lack of I guess size diversity in particular.
Mhm.
So I'm super into like both hyper feminine clothing and a more like androgynous sort of look, which I feel like is really well represented in like Asian culture specifically.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'd say it varies from day to day. Like
Yeah.
my attitude towards clothing like really changes, which I think is like an exciting aspect of it.
Okay, cool. What's the most challenging thing, with starting this journey, learning how to sew?
I think just being able to understand like the lingo and to be able to like read patterns and stuff, but also like measurements are really hard. It's kind of like baking in
Mm,
that way where it's pretty
mm,
exact. So,
mhm.
the work is kind of tedious, but I think it's great because like my skills from illustration and stuff is like really translated into it,
Oh,
like
okay.
tedious things and like detail oriented things and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, it's been fun.
Nice. So it's just right now, it's just kinda learning more of the technical side of it, before almost like learning the rules, right, before you can really go out and just explore and create kinda what you want, right? You gotta learn the like you said, the lingo or, like, learning measurements and how things kinda shape up, but that's cool. I think it's
Yeah,
awesome
thank
that
you.
you're kinda getting into that, and you have the one piece, what's sort of the goal once you're a little bit more, I guess, technically established, right? Like, what do you hope to eventually do with this? Is it just more of a hobby, or are you looking to really start, like, making more, like, pieces for yourself and for others?
I would love to do clothing drops. I think that would be my main goal.
Mhm,
Um, I don't think that I want to be starting like a brand per se, but like for instance, there's like a lot of visual artists who also make clothing and things that people can wear, like jewelry and everything. And they do like these small drops on Instagram where it's like a little capsule kind of.
mm, mhm,
Um, they do like pre-orders and stuff, and then they tailor it to like the people who are ordering. I feel like that could be really cool.
yeah.
And I'm also into photography, so I want to be able to create clothing that look really good on like film photography. And like maybe use my multiple skills to sort of
Yeah, just hone in
market.
everything, pull from
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. It's a
Okay.
very creative experience. I think as long as I'm having fun and I'm like making something, I'll be really happy. So,
That's awesome. That's cool. It's cool that a lot of what you've been into in the past, what you're currently into, and they're starting to get into now, really all tie in together so perfectly. And I know last time we spoke, you had mentioned working at the screen printer, right? Company.
yes.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. I
Cool.
work primarily in the embroidery room, which is actually great because I think the
It kind
skills
of
that I
works out
learned
a little
there,
bit. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, it's like translated into my work. So, it's been super fun.
That's awesome. And same thing, like with order and fulfillment, and just sort of learning having like an eye, like developing your eye, I imagine, right? For different pieces and stuff. I can imagine those all really tie into what you're currently doing. And you'd mentioned, so we got the sewing adventure, right? You'd mentioned you're still doing your illustrations and things like that. But you also mentioned earlier to mystery novels, right? You've been getting into
Oh yeah.
those? Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Um,
been super into them.
nice. So who's your favorite author as of late?
I've been really into Agatha Christie.
Oh, okay.
I believe she's from Britain, but she mainly does murder mysteries and stuff.
Mhm.
And she has different detective characters and everything. I think usually they're set in like the 1930s to like 1940s.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's been super interesting, really fun. I kind of refer to books like that as like sugar in your coffee. It's like
Oh,
you have
okay.
like the
Yeah.
classics that are really
Mhm.
challenging to sort of get through, and then you have ones that you just like, blow through really easily.
Yeah, they're just a
So
breeze to read.
yeah, I really like them. They're super fun and almost like camp because so much time has passed. So
Mhm.
it feels, I don't know, it feels like almost like a storybook kind of like I can see like the illustrations I would make to those stories like so vividly in my head. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I like it. It sort of like initiates my imagination. That
Yeah, it
makes
just helps
sense.
no, 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 yeah, it helps kinda get those gears turning with it's almost like starting a car, right? I mean, nowadays with the way cars are, I'm not a mechanic by any means, but you don't necessarily have to like warm it up in the morning, especially on like a cold day. But
Mm.
reading, I can imagine, just stimulates like the imagination and just sort of those creative juices and kind of like warming up a car, like you turn it on, kind of sit in it, let it sort of just get warm, and then you can really start, going places. So that's super cool. Is there a particular Agatha Christie book that you're a huge fan of? The only one I've ever read was And Then There Were None, but
Oh, yeah, I heard
I
that's
know
her
she's
most
got
famous work.
yeah, yeah. I know she's got a ton, and I know she's just yeah, like such a huge I guess just um in that space. She's just such a big influence. And my mother-in-law, she's a big fan of Agatha Christie. I know she's got a lot of her books and stuff. And
Oh,
um,
nice.
I've never. It's not my cup of tea or a cup of coffee, if you want to go back to that that reference, but it's still really cool. I still admire and I still respect it. But nonetheless, what's your current favorite of Agatha Christie's?
I recently finished Mrs. McGinty's Dead, which was
Okay.
a really fun read. It's like set in this small, sort of a countryside English town.
Mhm.
And this like seemingly like everything about this victim is that she's normal. She's like pretty unnotable. But she ends up being murdered. And then like I think it's Hercule Poirot is the detective in that specific novel, and he goes and he tries to investigate why anyone would want to kill this seemingly normal
Seemingly, yeah.
lady. Doesn't not really notable, you
What's the
know. I really
motive?
enjoyed that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, it
Okay.
was I tried to determine who did it like throughout the book.
Mhm.
Because my grandmother is actually my mama on my mom's side. She's super into mystery novels, and she would talk about them a lot, and she would tell me like, "Oh yeah, I'm always right when I guess like who did it. Like I can
Yeah.
always guess the murder." So I tried to do it and I was completely wrong. I was like, "Damn, maybe I don't have that skill of
Not
deduction."
just yet. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
I still gotta read more and then maybe I'll get better at it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I mean, I think the Agatha Christie collection is just pretty massive, so lots of reps, right? Lots of practice on figuring it out. I wonder too, again, I haven't read anything besides And Then There Were None, but I wonder if just with her writing style, if as you read more of her books, it starts to get just a little bit easier to identify who done it, right?
Mhm.
Um, or if it's one of those things where she knows that people are always going to be like looking out for, who had done it, what are all the clues, and then just throws all these curveballs to get you, kind of off the path. But that's cool. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of novels, I know the last time we had spoken, you had mentioned you were working on a graphic novel, right?
Yes, I have multiple concepts.
Mhm.
At all times. I think I'm just one of those people who sort of has a super active imagination, and I have to like write it down to be able to sort of translate it into anything, uh, I guess substantial that people can consume.
Mhm.
So I have, it's really bad, but I have like dozens of concepts to like sort of pick through at any particular time. Um, Right now, though, I have this concept. I was traveling a lot to San Francisco, um, and the Bay Area, and I live in Davis, California. So in order to do that, I have to take the train, and then
Mhm.
you transfer over to like the BART, which is like essentially like the main train for like the Bay Area. And I just sort of felt inspired. I thought, like, what if I made a story about like train employees, but make it like fantasy kind of? So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, I came up with this sort of like idea of like, okay, what if I made a slice of life comedy manga about people who have to deal with like the hijinks of like the fantasy realm and also like the human realm. And like the train station is like where everything like meets and sort of like intertwines and everything.
Okay. Is
Um,
it like a platform 9 3/4 thing, like Harry
yeah,
Potter? Like
kind
that's sort of
of.
the intersection? Okay. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So like you have one, it's called Gatekeepers. That's my
Mhm.
like working title right now. So you have trains that go to different realms and stuff. So you have one for like the human realm, and then like one for like hell, and one for like the magical realm or whatever. I just feel like it would be really cool to explore that. And also, I've worked in customer service for like a really long time.
Yeah, you have that
And
perspective.
yeah, there's wacky stories just in real life. So I
Uh,
can't imagine like how creative and like wacky I can get when I include like other realms and like other like mythical creatures and stuff. I feel like that would be
mm,
super fun and really hilarious to sort of like explore
I like that.
via the eyes of an employee.
Yeah, yeah, it's kinda written from that perspective, and yet it's layered with all these extra things, right? And it seems very expansive, opening it up to, like you said, other realms and just sort of different characters and fictional or non-fictional, but that's awesome. I think it's cool though that you'd mentioned that you have a lot of different concepts, almost like seeds, right, that you've planted. And they're just these ideas, and you can kind of go wherever you want with it. But it's nice because you can sort of pick it up, work on it a bit, put it back down, and just kind of tinker with it a little bit, right? Like a little bit, like off, I guess, script or just not, with it in front of you. And then maybe working on something else, it gives you inspiration to work on a previous project or reading more Agatha Christie or mystery novels, you know what I mean? Really all help you in terms of like crafting a story and it sort of this journey that the reader can go through and like creating all these connections and then tying it all together at the end. I think that's super cool. What
Yeah,
are
thank you.
the Yeah, no, for sure. What's the, what's your favorite one that you're currently working on? Is it that train concept?
I have a couple that I've been really into. I actually have a art TikTok and an art Instagram where I sort of like list out my top concepts.
Mhm,
Um, but there's a couple. I have one that's sort of meant to be a children's manga kind of style because I feel like even though it is like an illustrative, like creative art, there's not really a ton that's sort of like marketed towards children.
mhm,
So I have this idea for like a sort of again, it's like a mythical kind of vibe mixed with like the real world. It's sort of like a Little Mermaid kind of tale that I
okay,
wanna do. It's, yeah, so child's graphic novel that includes, like, mermaids and stuff, and then I have, sort of, like, slice of life ones. I know I mentioned in our last conversation that unfortunately
mhm,
didn't get to be published.
yeah,
I have this, graphic novel concept called Rocky in the South, which is just, like, this slice of life manga about, like, a group of friends living in this, like, sort of small southern town and their
mhm,
relationships and stuff. So I really like to explore human emotion and relationships like within the things that I write. I just think I think it's a great way to sort of have your audience feel connected. Like I think there's something really cool about stories like Harry Potter or like Game of Thrones and stuff where it's like such a massive world building experience. I think it's great, but I think I have a soft spot in my heart for things that are more grounded in reality and that
mhm,
sort of like touch you and inspire you to like live your life, kind of like what we're talking about in this podcast. So
yeah,
yeah.
mhm, that's cool. I do wanna ask, so with, like, just the different worlds that you can get into, right, with all the concepts you're writing about, obviously, you can take from your own experience, right, like you'd mentioned with the train stuff, with being in customer service for a number of years, but do you find that writing about kind of other worlds, right? Or just sort of other, I guess maybe from other perspectives, do you find yourself kind of diving into that just so you can learn, right? Because it's not necessarily like a lived experience that you've had, but more of like learning from the experiences of others. Do you know what I mean? And then trying to get into that
Mm.
mindset. Is that something that you do?
I do feel like when I'm writing those particular stories, I think a lot of it is based off of things that I've already read. So
Okay.
I'm very, I'm a very heavy like reader, very like, I used to be a super intense reader when I was a teenager.
Mhm.
And I would read like a lot of fantasy and stuff like that. So it's based off of things that I've consumed rather than lived. Um, but also, I feel like writing these types of stories is a form of sort of like escapism in a way, but in a healthy way. You get like a bit of a break from real life, and you get
Mhm.
to sort of like really be connected like with yourself and with your brain, and like these sort of imaginative scenarios and worlds that are contained within your mind. I think it's such a beautiful thing to explore. I think being grounded with reality is great and is essential to life, but I think life would lose a lot of its color if you didn't sort of like escape into your creative brain every once in
Mhm.
a while.
Yeah,
So
just use
I
your
think that's an
imagination
expression of
and
that. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I like that. It's kind of like watching a sitcom, right? Like watching Friends or The Office, Parks and Rec, or New Girl, things like that, where it's like this cohort of characters and they all have different personalities and you can have like a really long day at work, then you come home and you just want to like eat some food and just watch some TV, on the couch and stuff. And it's in a sense because you've stuck with the series for so long or whatever it might be and you've gotten to know these characters, it's almost like having like a group of friends that you're just sort of tuning into, you know what I mean? And it sounds like with the same, could be true for books and stuff, right? Like reading Harry Potter, yeah, those things may not exist in like the real world, right? In terms of like wizards and things like that. But I mean, maybe they do. But at the same time, you've gotten to know these characters so well, and you're following them on this adventure that they're sort of like a group of friends that you just kind of hang out with at the end of the day, kind of thing. And I think it's cool that you're not just like we talked or I mentioned a little bit earlier, not just consuming, but you're creating these things for other people. And it sounds like it's a very personal um, thing for you in terms of, these are the books and stuff that you've read as a teenager or even up to now where they've given you that, but now you want to kind of give that to other people. So I think that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's also important to mention that these things that don't exist necessarily in our world, like it does sort of like transport you, and it causes you to engage like with things that are different from reality. Like
Hmm.
that is one aspect of it. But I think the reason why so many people are drawn to stories like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, those types of universes and stuff is that there's an emotion to it that is still so present and relatable to actual life. And that's
Hmm.
like that core that I think is what brings people back, like coming back for more, sort of. It's just like, I think there is a balance between that of like the fantastical and like a human emotion, and like how the reader like relates to these particular characters and universes.
Mm,
So I really
yeah.
love exploring that balance personally, like in my work.
Yeah. Walking that line and just sort of having people see themselves in certain characters or even just seeing other people they know. And I think we might have mentioned this or talked about this in our last recording, but sort of how we had talked about you sort of crafting these stories, right, for different characters. And I think you'd mentioned last time you kind of come to think of them almost like children of yours, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, you had said just how, figuring out just because they all have their own personalities. And so balancing staying true to the character, but then also kind of staying true to the storyline is something that you've been really experiencing and just kind of working on. But is that something that you're still, I guess, not necessarily struggling with, but is that something that's still pretty um, relevant for you now as you're writing, these different concepts?
for sure. Yeah, I think no matter what I write, I'm gonna view my characters as sort of like my babies, or
Mm,
like at least extensions of myself and like the people I have around me in life. They say like write what you know, and I think for me, I don't really write what I know, but I do write people that I know. So
mm,
I
mhm,
think that's how I sort of like relate to storytelling, is just like I meet so many people and I have so many relationships that I really value, and to bring that into a creative art form and sort of like flesh it out with my own like unique voice is something
Mhm,
that I think I really enjoy about the craft. Um, so yeah, and if I struggle with like creativity and like creating characters and like storylines and stuff, I actually think that that's a win.
mhm.
Like I think it was Alyssa Liu, gold medalist figure skating in the Olympics actually. She was saying struggle makes her feel alive. And I actually I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that there's something addictive about that sort of like push and pull that you feel when you're trying to create something. If that
I
makes
like
any
that.
sense.
No, yeah, it definitely does. I was gonna ask though, because you'd mentioned, write what you know, but you kind of write not necessarily what you know, but who you know, right? In a sense. Do you ever write certain conversations with certain characters that are maybe loosely based on people you know, but do you ever write certain conversations that you maybe wish you had or sort of
Mm.
replay a conversation and with time and sort of space and perspective try and almost like refine the conversation itself of with someone you had? Is that a thing that you do?
That's such a good question. I don't know if I necessarily do that. But I will say that I try to include a lot of like humor, and I think that just naturally it sort of comes across as like things that I would say. Like
Mm,
I would
mhm.
have like bits in my writing, and I think that those could be like actual bits that I would have with my siblings. You know, we're a very funny family. So I think
Yeah.
in that
Yeah, yeah.
aspect, I think that is sort of like translated into my work. But yeah, I've never really thought about it like that as sort of like a continuation of a conversation that I've had like in reality. So I actually
Yeah.
might use that in the
There you go.
future.
Then you're welcome.
Yeah,
But
thank you. I'll
yeah.
credit you.
No, for sure. No, all I was gonna say is royalties. We'll talk about that later, though. But
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, of course. No, the reason why I asked though is because I think it's interesting. I do enjoy writing, but more about ideas that I kind of struggle with, or I'm just kind of wrestling with at the moment. Um,
Mhm.
and they're not necessarily like full on storylines. There are times where I'll write, even if it's just to myself in like a journal, um, where I'll write just about personal experiences and how an idea that I'm wrestling with applies to that, or how I've sort of figured my way through certain things. And I imagine, though, writing sort of fiction and this creating this universe of characters, especially if they're, again, even if it's loosely based, but sort of based on people you know or people you've met, I can imagine there's just that space to kind of recreate something like an experience that's happened or something maybe you've hoped or wished happens kind of thing. And I think that's really cool because it opens that door and again, just another layer on top of, like you were saying before, things are sort of grounded and rooted in reality, but they're still built, what's being built upon it is just all the different realms and just different things. So I thought I'd ask, but I think it's cool. I think it's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Uh,
definitely enjoy it.
That's cool. Talk to me though about photography. I know you mentioned earlier you do some film photography. What got you into doing photography just in the first place?
So I'm kind of like, I guess, like a noob or whatever in the
Mhm,
realm of photography, which I don't really mind. I think it's actually a super good thing to be a beginner because you have a whole bunch of like a whole world of potential essentially. Um, I don't know. I think honestly, I think I just saw there's this photo shoot I saw of a couple and they had a film photography session. I think it was for their wedding, but it was like I think the set was somewhere in Vietnam because the bride was Vietnamese, native from Vietnam. So there's like this specific aesthetic that it had that really itched my creative brain. Whereas like the couples were in like complete like bridal groom like attire, but they
mhm.
were sort of sitting in more like casual settings, and the set design was like super cool because they were just like eating on the street. or like sitting next to a vending machine, or like both of them I think were on like a little like scooter,
Mhm.
like perched there and they're like wedding attire, just like going through the streets of Vietnam. And there was just something so human, and also the aesthetic was just like very, it felt very real and sort of like gritty in a way that you don't expect from like wedding photo shoots. Like
Mm, mhm.
I feel like bridal photo shoots specifically are usually tailored to be very like quote unquote perfect, or like just pristine. But there was something about seeing that sort of like something, an image that's like a little bit dirty because you know you're sitting on the street in your white gown, right? But there's
Mhm.
something just so unique and almost humorous about it, but it felt very real. And I think that's what sort of got me into the idea of like, oh, I really want to try film photography because there's something about like classic film, 35 millimeter film that I really like. That sort of vintage look, like a little
Mhm.
bit gritty, you know, not perfect,
Yeah.
not like pristine and like tailored to a specific audience. Um, so yeah, I think that's what I try to experiment with mainly, is just
Yeah.
photographing things that I experience in real life.
I like that. I like the concept too of the wedding, photos being sort of, you'd mentioned, like bridal photos are sort of, the aim is sort of perfection, right? But then this kind of flipped it on its head of like, yeah, you're striving for perfection, but it's also embracing the imperfections, right? So your nice white gown or white dress, you're sitting on the streets eating, you know what I mean? So it gets a little bit dirty, and it's like there is the idea of perfection, and there's the pursuit of it in a lot of ways. But it's also realizing that kind of in that pursuit, because we're human and because we experience this world as humans, there are going to be sort of imperfections along the way. And those are sort of features and not a bug, right? Of the pursuit, right? And I think it's cool in a more kind of zoomed out, sort of just really analytical way. It's cool. I like to with the film photography. I'm not a photographer myself, but I am very amazed by like who I can see online that does film photography, and I think it's cool. There's something about that, like you're saying, kind of like gritty vintage look.
Mm.
Um, Especially nowadays where I feel like people are like a lot of people are really shifting more towards like analog things, right?
Mm,
Especially with like
yes.
the introduction and sort of maybe, I don't want to say takeover of AI, but just with a lot of I think what the term is like AI slop, right? That is sort of on the
Yeah,
internet now. And so
AI
people are
slop is
really,
hilarious.
yeah, people are really tuning out, or choosing to go offline a bit, and then they're, picking up like an old Game Boy or an old like iPod Nano kind of thing and going analog. And I think it's cool. And I think there's something about, for me, about seeing like a photo that was shot, in film, of like, yeah, you can like digitally alter, when you kind of take other photos, but just sort of you're capturing it for what it is, and you're sort of relying on these more grounded and like rooted things of like the lighting and things like that, right? Where you can't necessarily have everything perfect, right? There's going to be
Mm.
something that's a little bit off, but that's what makes it real, and I think that's what makes it attractive. So that's cool.
Yeah, I would agree. I think um, another thing that just sort of draws me in about those types of photographs is like it's also just fun. I really encourage people to get, I think it's called a point and shoot, what I have. It's just like
Mm.
a normal, like 35 millimeter camera. And just like walk around, you know, be with the people you love and like snap candid photos. I think documenting life like that is so enjoyable. And we're on this earth for such a short period of time. I think like creative art forms, especially photography, are regarded to be very serious things, but it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be. You can document your life and like take cool photos and just enjoy yourself. And that's what I really love about it, that new hobby that I have. I
I
get
like
to
it.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the difference of like, you can take a photo with your phone, right? And you could try and craft the perfect, I guess, perfect selfie, right? Where the
Mm.
angle is a certain way and you're holding the phone a certain way and all of these different things. And then you can take it, and because it's a modern day phone, you can see the photo, right? In like real time. You'd be like, ah, that
Mm.
was kind of messed up. I'm gonna like retake it. But I think with like film photography or just stuff that you can't necessarily get that instant gratification, right? Um, with right away. I think it's cool because you're kind of letting go a bit of that stress and that pressure to get everything perfect, and I just kind of take it for what it is, and then it's like a real quick like let's just snap a quick photo, bam, and then move on with your life. You know what I mean? You don't have to
Yeah.
obsess about angles and lighting and all that stuff. Not to say though that those aren't necessary in some cases, but it's just like you said, we're only here for a limited amount of time, right? And to just kind of push the title of the podcast, how can we enjoy our stay? So if we're obsessing over these little things that don't necessarily matter in the big picture, it takes away from the essence of like why we're here. But
Yeah,
man,
for sure.
I think it's cool. You said everyone should get kind of those point and shoot cameras. Are those things like inexpensive, or are they pretty got a pretty penny towards it?
I think that the disposable cameras are actually 35 millimeters, so which is like the type of film. So you could
Uh,
just get a disposable camera, and image editing after the fact is also a thing. So like,
oh, okay.
you have a lot of freedom, way more freedom than I think people normally associate with film photography.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, disposable cameras work. Again, I'm a noob, so I can't really speak for anyone else's
Oh,
taste.
okay. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, for me, I have a point and shoot. I want to say it was around like 60-ish dollars.
Okay.
But yeah, you can definitely find things that are affordable.
Yeah, I've seen like Instagram channels or YouTube channels where they sort of give strangers disposable cameras and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
just I don't know if it's like one specific channel or if it's like just a bunch of versions of it, but they'll like give a random stranger or just someone, here's a disposable camera, do what you want, take whatever you want, and then send it at this address, and they'll go get it developed, and then they'll show all the photos." And I think that's
Mm,
so cool because the fact that you're giving it to so many different people, you're able to capture life from their perspective. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's
yeah.
cool. Yeah, I think that's a cool concept because, you know, yeah, life is experienced, you know, by us, and we're experiencing the human condition, but at the same time, like it is going to look very different for a lot of people. And just the fact that you can just give a stranger, I don't know how it's set up really, but you can give a stranger like a disposable camera and just say, here, take whatever you want, send it back, and then just to kind of see what life looks like at that point in time for them. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it always looks so dope. Like all of the
Yeah,
videos that I've
yeah.
seen, they look so cool. I think it's because they're condensing memories essentially. It's like you're
Hmm.
seeing someone else's memories in real time, and I think that's what makes it really special.
Yeah, and it also feels like because they are, these strangers that you're just there's like these one-offs, right? Of this video is going to be about this one person took all these photos. It's almost like going on a vacation, right? For a little bit. Like you go visit
Mm,
somewhere and maybe it's like the only time you ever visit, but you kind of get like a little I guess snapshot if you want to get like punny into like the culture, wherever you're visiting, and then you kind of go back home and you're like, man, that was fun, and you can just look back at the memories or the photos or videos you took and be like, yeah, I can remember being there and just what it's like. So I think it's cool. I think
yeah.
it's something that is, from my outside looking in perspective, it seems like it's growing more recently in popularity, along with kind of that, I guess, analog versus AI movement, right? That I mentioned
Mm,
earlier.
yes.
But I think those two things really go hand in hand, and it's getting us to sort of be more human again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a really cool point in time that we're at right now.
Yeah, we are definitely shifting more towards. I think a lot of the content or things that are out there are really shifting more towards just simple and not professionally done sort of things, and it's really taken off. So good, because in a space where I'm very much a beginner, Hopefully, this is one of those things. Nonetheless, though, next question I have for you is, what does a perfect day look like?
Ooh, loaded question. Um,
Yes.
I think the perfect day for me would be it's warm and sunny outside. I mean, we're from Guam, so like I
Yeah.
enjoy like warm weather. Um, so yeah, warm and sunny outside and a good book, reading a good book, maybe like on a bench somewhere peaceful. Um, and then as I'm sitting in the sunlight reading this book, I'll have like an emotional support beverage. That's what I like to call them. So like a latte or like a nice little matcha, like a little pick me up.
Uh,
Um, and of course, just being surrounded by like family and stuff. I think that's perfect.
nice. What's a book that you'd be reading on a perfect day?
Oof. I mean, currently probably a mystery novel, but
Yeah.
I also have been reading Don Quixote recently, which is like a classic. Um, and it's also like probably one of the few classics that I've found that is legitimately super funny. So I think something lighthearted like that,
Uh,
but something that like causes you to sort of like still be able to engage your brain and sort of like be in a space of like thinking would be absolutely perfect for something like that.
love that. Nice. And you mentioned, I love that idea, emotional support beverage. You had mentioned like a latte or a matcha. I've seen some stuff that you posted online of like you making your own matcha, right?
Yeah.
So on a perfect day, would you make your matcha or would you buy a cup of matcha?
I mean, I don't know if I'm probably biased, but I do like my own matcha. I like it because I make it to my personal tastes. So I
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
would make my own matcha. I'm still sort of like new in that hobby as well. But I've been experimenting with like different flavored syrups and stuff. So,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I think I would make my own because it's a chance to be like creative. You know me, I'm always trying to be creative.
Yeah.
And then also like you get to have something to drink after. So it's like a little reward.
You gotta enjoy the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not a matcha man or a matcha boy, in my case. I've tried it. It's not for me. Jazz, my wife she likes it. She doesn't really drink like coffee or anything like that, but she does like some tea. She likes some matcha. And I think it's cool because I've seen a lot of people really getting into it. And with
Yeah.
I don't know the process specifically, but like there's like the brush and things like that. I
Yeah.
make coffee on my own, like I make my own cold brew and things like that. But it's cool to kind of have all the like little tools that you're using. And it seems like it's its own world, right? In a sense.
Yeah, I think it's just a pretty in-depth hobby in and of itself. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not a professional barista by any means. I would love to sort of like explore that world. But some people's matcha, I guess, methods or whatever are so detailed that I'm just like, I mean, I just strain the powder and I whisk it, but like go off. Like I support your creative journey, if you will. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think definitely in the US it's become super popular. Like
Yeah.
I think around 2020 was the big like matcha like
Like with the pandemic,
boom, I
maybe.
guess. Yeah. I think
Okay.
because it can be a pretty in-depth hobby, like people got really into it. And it also just like
Mm,
tastes good. Like, well,
yeah.
it depends on like the person,
Who
but
makes
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're kind of experimenting with different syrups lately. What's your current go-to matcha recipe?
Ooh, um, so I don't actually buy super expensive matcha. Like it can get pretty expensive. Especially because it's so popular. I think in the
Yeah.
US prices have gone up. So I think the brand that I use is Maeda. It's like you can just get it at Safeway or whatever. So I just get the powder, and then I was experimenting with like Madeline syrup. Um, so essentially,
Is that a
there's this
brand or?
place. So it's like the flavor of it is supposed to represent like a Madeline cookie kind of vibe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. So like I think that's the fun thing about matcha specifically is it's a good base for other flavors. Um,
Mm,
there's this really popular coffee shop. I think there's like it's a chain, so there's shops in Boston and New York and stuff. But they're
mm,
called Blank Street Coffee and Tea, and they make flavored matchas, and one of them is a strawberry shortcake matcha. Um, I really went down a rabbit hole recently because I love strawberry shortcake. It's like my favorite type of cake. Like
mhm.
my mom makes a vegan version of it for my birthday every year. That's like
Oh,
how
yeah,
much I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Yeah, so when I heard there was a strawberry shortcake matcha, I was like, "Oh my God, I have to figure out how to make
Have to
this."
try it, yeah.
Yeah, and Blank Street isn't in California, I don't think. So there was no way I was going to be able to get it. So I did a lot of research. I went pretty in depth with my research. And I
Yeah.
figured out like what brand of syrup they use in the recipe, which I think is like a European like Madeline syrup. And so I was like, okay, how can I make this affordable? Because I just don't have $20 to throw away on syrup. So
Yeah.
I looked up recipes and I was able to sort of formulate one of my own that sort of resembled like a Madeleine taste. And
Mhm,
then
mhm.
you just use like strawberry jam for the strawberry part, and
Oh,
then
cool.
matcha. Yeah, it turned out pretty good. It definitely did taste like cake, to me at least. So
Yeah.
I consider that a success.
Yeah, a win's a win, yeah.
Yeah, take the
That's cool,
win.
it's yeah, instead of going all the way over to the East Coast and standing in line for what I imagine is a near $10 cup of matcha, right?
Yeah.
What do you call it? You can go and recreate your own. That's awesome. Great answer though, by the way, for a perfect day.
Oh,
I
yeah,
love it.
thanks.
Very simple as well. And it's almost like you can recreate that most days, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
good.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like that's the beauty of it. It's just I'm a simple lass. I like simple things. Family,
Mm,
good drink, good book, some sunshine.
there you go.
But yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
that's all you need.
Yeah. What does a good life look like to you?
A good life, I think, is full of a variety of experiences. I think one of the things that I really love about living is just there's a whole world out there and just so many places that you can visit, food you can taste, and like I think it's the purpose of life, honestly, is to find joy and fulfillment. And so I think family is a big part of that. So to find like your community and everything and people who like lift you up and want to have these experiences with you is super essential to a good life. Um, as well as just allowing yourself sort of the freedom of self-expression and creativity and again, like I said, a variety of experiences. So like travel and eating good food and laughing. You know, I think laughter is a huge part of a good life. Like seeing the
Mm,
humor in things when the world feels pretty like dark
bleak
and
and
dank.
yeah.
Yeah. We've been experiencing a lot of that lately, so I think
Yeah.
we deserve the luxury of laughter a little bit more than we think.
Mm. Yeah. Love that. Beautiful, beautiful answer. What would be your last meal if you had?
Ooh, ooh, that's such a good question. Um, Probably Kadu, to be honest. That's been my favorite since childhood. It's also
Mhm.
like really achievable. So,
Yeah.
probably like a nice chicken Kadu with white rice and I think probably matcha would be there too, like as my drink.
Yeah.
And then
Is it the strawberry
for
shortcake
dessert,
one?
yeah, probably. And then for
Yeah.
dessert would be the strawberry shortcake cake that my mom makes
Okay.
every year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have chicken kadu, you have with white rice, you have strawberry shortcake matcha, and then you have strawberry shortcake cake.
Yeah,
Love it.
very
Okay, I'm
predictable,
sensing a
as you
theme
can
here. I'm
see.
sensing a theme.
Yeah.
Okay. Love it. Well, great answer. That's an awesome last meal. Yeah, now I want kadu. I haven't eaten yet today, but it does
Mm,
sound really good. So yeah, maybe I might make that this weekend. We'll see.
nice.
Yeah. Next question. Another loaded question, but this is sort
Mm,
of the conclusion of the show, if that makes sense. And it's sort of in a sense, thinking about mortality, but what are some things you wanna do before you die?
Um, I think honestly, like growing up tomorrow, and having like a big family and everything, you are sort of confronted with death a lot. So I think I've thought about this in depth. Actually, I'm pretty young. I'm 26, but I think like especially in recent years, I've been thinking about like the things that I want to achieve before I not to be bleak, but kick the bucket. Um, so
Yeah,
I think owning land is very important to me, if possible. I don't know, like, if I will be able to get the funds to be able to do that, but if I do, I want to be back home on Guam, in Santa Rita, uh, and sort of like be self-sufficient, or at least as self-sufficient as I can be. Um, so yeah, owning land and raising a family on that land, I think, is something I want to do before I die. Um, and having my partner there with me. Um, I think those are the most important things that I always think about when I think about that particular subject.
nice. That's awesome. It's nice that it's almost like a coming home for you, right? In a sense. And yeah, owning land in Santa Rita, raising kids with having a beautiful family. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Anything
I
else
want to
though?
finish. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, no, go ahead. Go. Do you want
I
to
was
finish
just
what?
gonna say I want to finish life where I started life. I think that's why that's so important to
Mm,
me.
mm. Yeah, it
Everything
seems
comes
very
back full
symbolic.
circle. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I was gonna ask though, are there anything else on the bucket list?
Um, I want to travel more for sure. I think I
Yeah.
want to see more of Asia, and I've been to Europe, but I was fairly young when I went, so I want to go back and sort of explore as an adult.
Mm.
So travel's
Any
really big.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Any particular places in Asia and Europe you want to go to?
I really want to go to Korea. I haven't ever been there, and then I would love to explore the countryside of Japan.
Okay.
Only lived in Tokyo, so I've only been to urban areas. But I
Uh,
heard the countryside's beautiful. So for Asia, those places. In Europe, I think I would love to visit the Italian countryside. I've just heard it's like super beautiful and picturesque.
mhm,
Um, and I think like as I grow older, I'm definitely more of a countryside person than I am a city person. I think like living in a
mhm.
city is like super convenient, but when I think of my enjoyment, I think of like fields and trees and grass and sunshine and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
just kind of slowing down a
yeah,
bit and this is simple living, right? You mentioned you're a simple kind of girl, so
yeah,
I like it.
really
I like
connect
it.
with those things.
Hmm. Cool. Can be making matcha and reading books. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in the Italian countryside. Sounds
There
great.
you go. There you go. Maybe having some wine or something, some pasta if needed, but that's cool. Those are cool answers. I love everything you mentioned, and it all is centered, in my opinion, it's all centered around living well. It's all centered around just simple living and not really complicating things, right? Whether it's film photography or it's, sewing and things like that. I think it's awesome. So, Maya, I hope you've enjoyed your stay. Thank you for coming on the show. Before I let you go, though, anything interesting or anything you want to talk about that you got coming up?
I have been trying to put more content out on social media in regards to illustration and tattoo uh, like drafts that I have.
Mhm.
So there's gonna be plenty that is coming up soon, hopefully. Um, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. People want to go follow me on my art accounts. That
There
would
you
be
go.
great
Yeah. And
if
I'll
you're
plug it all
interested.
in. Yeah, I'll plug it all into the show notes so everyone knows where to go and definitely shout it all out. But awesome. Otherwise, Maya, again, thank you for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed your stay. And until next time.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. All right, everybody.